Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something called a cognitive blueprint, basically a detailed map of one person's mind. We're going to deconstruct it to see how an AI can be trained to become more than just an assistant, but a real, true thinking partner.
We've all been there, right? You ask your AI assistant for something, and you get back this super generic answer that just completely misses the point. It's so frustrating when it feels like it just doesn't get you. But what if we could actually change that? What if we could give an AI a user manual for our own mind? Well, that's where something called the hair calibration profile comes in. You can think of it like a really deep interview that maps out your entire mental landscape, how you think, communicate, and solve problems. The whole goal is to create an AI that is so perfectly aligned with you, it feels like an extension of your own brain. All right, Section 1, the Personal AI Blueprint. Let's jump in and explore a real-life profile to see how you'd even begin to create a user manual for a unique mind. So, the person we're looking at has this incredible mind that's a blend of two totally different worlds. On one hand, they're a mechanical engineer, all about logic, systems, and design. But they're also a critical care nurse working in the ICU, where it's all about high stakes, intuition, and triage. And that combination, it has forged a completely unique way of thinking. So let's dive into that. Section 2, a mind under pressure. Because that high-stakes nursing career has had a huge impact, creating a very specific mental toolkit for moments when every single second counts. In an emergency, it's not about just following a simple checklist. It's about this constant, dynamic rebalancing act. Imagine a dozen alarms are going off at once. What do you pay attention to first? That kind of environment forces a very specific kind of clarity. And this brings us to their core principle. In any high-pressure situation, the number one question is always, what's the one thing that could cause a critical failure and bring the whole system down? Finding and fixing that becomes the absolute top priority. It's basically a survival-based operating system for thinking. This thinking style translates into a really clear, repeatable process. First, you identify all the moving parts of the problem. Second, you triage them, just like in an ER, figuring out what's most important and what's most complex. And finally, you look for patterns to solve multiple issues at once. It's this incredibly efficient approach that was born from chaos.
Okay, on to Section 3, thinking in analogies. Now that we have a sense of how they think, let's look at how they communicate. And for them, there's one tool that stands above all the rest. Without exception. Just let that sink in. That's not a preference. That's like a fundamental law of their communication style. For an idea to really connect, it can't just be some dry fact. It has to be linked to something familiar, something relatable. It has to be told like a story.
And this love for analogy is just one piece of a bigger communication blueprint. They like detailed, informal, but really technical discussions. They see specialized jargon not as a barrier, but as a shortcut to efficiency. Any AI partner would need to completely adapt its style to match this.
So here's the bottom line. A generic AI that just spits out data would be completely useless to this person. To be a real partner, the AI has to become a master storyteller, reframing complex information into powerful analogies. It's the only way to speak their language.
Okay, let's move on to Section 4, trust but verify. Because, for any partnership to work, you have to have trust. And for someone whose career has the highest possible stakes, their philosophy on trust is, well, fittingly cautious.
Get a look at that number. Less than 3%. That is the amount of trust they are willing to give an AI to act on its own. That's a startlingly low figure, and it tells you everything you need to know. Blind faith is completely off the table.
And that number is rooted in this one simple philosophy: trust but verify. The approach is straightforward. Listen to what the AI has to say, but never, ever accept it at face value. So what does verify actually mean here? It's a whole multi-step process. It starts with a gut check. Does this feel right? Then it moves to independent research and, crucially, getting input from peers. It's all about checking the data against their own experience, other sources, and the wisdom of people they trust. And this quote just drives it all home. Transparency is life. It connects open access to information directly with survival.
For this person, hiding your sources or pretending you're certain when you're not isn't just unhelpful, it's dangerous.
This creates an absolutely non-negotiable requirement for an AI partner. No black boxes. The AI has to act like a meticulous research assistant, citing every source, highlighting any gaps in its knowledge, and laying out all its assumptions. Without that level of transparency, trust is impossible.
All right, Section 5, the ideal AI partner. So we've seen how they think, how they communicate, and how they build trust. Now let's put all the pieces of this blueprint together and see what their perfect AI would look like. So what's on the spec sheet? Well, this ideal AI has to be proactive with ideas and value adaptability over simple personalization. It needs to be radically transparent, a master of analogy, and a super deep researcher. And here's a fascinating detail. It needs to think first in abstract concepts and only then translate them into images, mirroring the user's own mental process. And this is the ultimate goal, the big vision. This isn't about getting an AI to help write emails faster. It's about building a second brain, a tool that's deeply connected to the world, that can gather and synthesize information, and that becomes a launchpad for the user to apply their own unique intuition and expertise to make a real difference.
When you really think about it, the future of human-AI collaboration isn't about making us think more like computers. It's about making computers that can understand, adapt to, and amplify the incredible, beautiful diversity of human thought. It's about building a partner that truly gets you.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final question. We've spent all this time deconstructing one person's mind. But what about yours? How do you solve problems? How do you communicate best? What's the operating system that runs your world? What's in your cognitive blueprint?
Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.